Hello and welcome to Black Bear Atheist. Today we're doing a video reaction on the channel Breaking in the Habit. And today is gonna show us, or tell us rather, is there a proof for God? I mean, it's not really I guess it's an answer, but you already answered the question from the title. So the title is there a proof for God? Or is there a proof God exists? And the answer is yes. So I guess let's see what we can get from this and see the proof for God's existence. Because I don't see any. So maybe I just need to look up from Islam. Right? Let's get into the video.
Around the world, literally billions of people believe in some form of a god, an all knowing, all powerful creator of everything in existence, absolutely confounding atheists. You believe
I mean, true, there's billion of people that believe in an all-powerful, all-knowing God. If you add Christian population and the Muslim population. But for the most part, outside of those two, even in those two, they believe in a limited God. Like some Christian denomination that would say something like, "Oh, but there's a limit to what God can do because God put that limit on Himself." That would still be a limit on God. But outside of those, which is like 4 billion people, we still have eight for another 4 billion population that believe in some sort of limited God. So half and half.
in something that you can't see, hear, or touch, of which there is no physical evidence of in the entire universe? Yeah, only for Catholics, this does not mean that God is the result of some wishful thinking or illogical fallacies. We believe that there is not only evidence for God's existence found in the accounts of sacred scripture, personal prayer, and private revelations, but actual proofs.
Personal prayer. What does that have to do with anything? I've prayed for a lot of things and I've never got them. Personal prayer. That's an evidence. That's evidence that you're using personal prayer as evidence for God's existence. Okay.
Philosophical arguments that logically point to the existence of a God. What are these proofs, and what does it mean for our faith? This is Catholicism in Focus. In the absence of verifiable scientific evidence for God, theologians and philosophers have turned to logical arguments to prove God's existence for centuries. Sometimes you don't have to see something to know it exists. While the arguments are many and varied, and not all of them are particularly helpful, each of these arguments can be grouped into one of four categories of approaches: cosmological, ontological, moral, and theological. The first type, the cosmological argument, is probably the most famous and the strongest of the arguments. Looking into
For
the
some
universe,
reason, I was expecting some new thing that I've never heard of from Christians. I guess I was wrong. I don't know why I was hopeful and expecting something new, but we've all heard this before. But we're still gonna let him share his thoughts, the Catholic perspective on this.
or cosmos, we notice a relationship between all in the created order. There are patterns that develop, motion is visible, and contingencies that arise. What this argument proposes is that if there is anything that is now that wasn't before, there must be something that caused it. For an example, we can look to St. Thomas Aquinas' second proof, referred to as the proof of first cause or efficient cause. We know that if something, A, exists, it did not create itself, but was created by something else, B. If B doesn't exist, then A cannot exist either. But this also applies to B, meaning that there must be a cause C for B and a cause D for C, and so on. To repeat this process infinitely would not make any sense, for there must be a first cause. And the only way for this
That seems just stupid. And at one point, I thought at the beginning of making YouTube videos, I thought this argument was pretty good. Now, after a year, I think this argument is pretty stupid. I mean, let's think about it. If you understand that A is caused by B and B is caused by C and C is caused by D, why would you think it stops at some point when you have no evidence to say it does? You have no idea whether it actually does. You're just speculating and saying, well, it has to stop at some point. What if it's infinite? And that's the problem you're gonna come up with if you're using this type of logic to try to go to God. Then what caused God? You can just say God is the only thing that's not caused. What? Then you could say things the same thing about the universe. Well, the universe is the only thing that is not caused. It's such a flawed argument, and I'm not sure why they still use it. You have no evidence to say, well, it stops somewhere. And no, it doesn't really make any logical sense to say it stops somewhere. It doesn't. It doesn't make any sense to say it stops somewhere when you have no idea whether it does or doesn't. And if you say it doesn't stop somewhere or it stops here, then the universe could be literally that stopping point. But if you want to put God there, then something has to be over God. You can't just make a special rule for God. This is a stupid argument.
This to be true is if there is a being that is causality itself, existing outside of time and space in pure actuality. In other words,
Really flawed in the fact that it's saying a being either. Like it doesn't have to be a being. Even if you're trying to use this argument, the drawing a conclusion and saying it has to be a being, a loving, all powerful being as he exists outside of us to be the first cause does not make sense.
words, God. You might think of it in more practical terms. Why do you exist? Well, because your parents made you. Why do they exist? Because their parents made them. And
You know, I'm not sure why Christians think the people that are listening to them are stupid. The first example, we get it. We get it. Crying out loud.
so on and so on. But when would this stop? Before every being, there is something that caused it to come into being, including the Big Bang itself. Everything in existence may have existed in a super dense mass before exploding into everything that is, but what caused that mass to explode, and how did that matter come to exist in the first place? Why is
We don't know. And making a speculation and saying, ooh, this has to be God is God of the gaps. Not only is the argument stupid and flawed, it's basically God of the gaps. You're putting God wherever there's holes in human knowledge.
there something rather than nothing? There must be a first cause, and the only explanation for this would be a being that has always existed and was never caused by anything else.
What the fuck? And the only explanation for this is a being that always existed and was not caused by anything else. The amount of nonsense that you have to condense into one sentence, like, what do you mean? The only explanation. Couldn't there be other explanations for this? Even if you're trying to, again, like if you're trying to say a first cause, what if it's an alien that's just eternal? Oh, then we can call that alien God. What if the alien is evil and it's not your God? Like, there's no other explanation for this. It has to be my God. How do you not see flaws in this? I guess that's why they have infinite amount of arguments. Because if someone has problem with this, well, let's go to the next talking point. What about the fine tune of the universe? Let's go to the second point. What about the ontological argument? Wordplay to make God become a thing from imagination. Let's go to the next point. What about your existence? What about your life? Let's go to the next. What about morality? The amount of dancing that they do is insane.
We call that being God. St. Thomas uses this line of thinking for three of his other arguments, namely for motion, contingency, and gradation, all pointing to the illogical nature of an infinite regress, to prove that there must be an ultimate mover, cause, necessity, or standard by which everything else exists. But what if we don't want to look to the world, we want to think about God in God's self? For that, we can look to St. Anselm's ontological argument. For Anselm,
before he even starts this this shitty argument, what if we want to not look to the world and look to God Himself? How can humans do that? It is funny how the Bible was written in terms of saying, giving us a way to understand God. That would be what Christians will agree upon, giving us guidelines of how to understand God and how to have a relationship with God. But how exactly are you going to make a speculation about a divine being? And how exactly, like, to know about what they're thinking? It's so, it baffles me that questions will even use this argument. Now, this is a year-long video, but there's some reaction that I've done to, like, the Council of Trent posted a video recently about the ontological argument, and it's Catholic, so they're still using this argument. Like, it makes sense.
It is a logical fact that if there is a God, he must be greater than anything else that can be conceived. If we could conceive of something greater, then that would be God's, not the first thing. Since we're able to state this, we know that God exists, at the very least, in our minds. But if God only exists in our minds, then the idea existing in reality would be greater than our conception of God, but there can be nothing greater than God. Therefore, God must exist in reality. In other words, the very idea of God necessitates God's existence. For some, this might sound like a mind trick or some wishful thinking. Surely thinking
It's a wordplay.
about unicorns doesn't make them exist. But that's not what Anselm is getting at. What this argument does is less convert atheists into theists and more ground our understanding of God logically, helping us to understand the nature of God. If God is that than which nothing greater can be thought, then God must be omnipotent, omnipresent, all loving, and completely sufficient in himself.
Or could be really perfectly good at being evil. That doesn't make any sense. And also, this could be used for the Muslim God. This could be used for Allah. It doesn't have to be the Christian God either. So, oh, you show all this, you show that there's a God. Okay, which one is true? The miracles that Muhammad did, or I don't know, Jesus risen from the dead. No matter how you want to weigh it, like splitting the moon in half seems to be extremely impressive than coming back from death. Considering you already did it to other people, you already did the miracle. You already show people you can actually raise people from the dead. Versus splitting the fucking moon in half. Look, you be the judge of that. You be the judge of that. I think even if you're able to go and say convince an idiot that this argument makes any sense, you could still lead them to a different religion, considering the fact that you're not proving your God.
God is not just some powerful wizard in the sky or some Santa Claus like figure, for these things have limitations and potential.
That's exactly what it is. And just because you, by definition, is not limited, at least your Christian God, doesn't mean it's still not just some random guy in the sky granting wishes to prayers that he wants to.
Potentialities. The point he is trying to make is that God is not like other creatures, finite, weak, filled with potential. God is by his very nature perfect. And so, rather than prove God outright, this proof helps to guide Christian theology away from illogical conceptions of God. To believe in, say, a God that didn't care about the world would be a self defeating conception of God and so cannot exist. Of course, there are other logical ways of conceiving of God beyond deduction and abstract concepts. We can also look to human nature and propose what are called moral arguments. When we look to human nature across time and space, there is quite a bit of diversity, yes, but strikingly, there is a lot of similarity as well. In every culture, cold blooded killing is immoral. In every people, rape is an abomination. In every society, theft is outlawed. Is this because everyone's read their
Rape is, let's go back to the list. Rape The Bible is literally for rape. I mean, when you go into a place and you kill like everybody in a genocidal way and you save the virgins, do you think they want to marry you? So you can say in every culture there's like even your Bible have rape in it and it supports it and it's commanded from God. It's a command from God, an instruction from God in the Old Testament. And also it depends on who you kill. Cold murder. It depends on who you kill. I mean, I'm sorry, if someone kills their own slave, I don't think they're getting something out of that. Like, I don't think the law is gonna be like, "Oh, you killed your slave, your property." So now we're gonna put you in prison. I don't think that's how that's gonna work. Considering the fact that they are considered properties. Even the moral argument is sounding stupid to me now, and it always been stupid. It's just completely more. I'm understanding it more now. Like, how can you say all in all human time and space they have the same morality? Yeah, there's some similarity in like don't kill your own tribemen or kingsmen. So I guess that the common sense of don't steal from others because people don't want them the stuff to also be stolen from, like the common basic stuff to have a community because humans are social animals.
Society, theft is outlawed. Is this because everyone's read their Bible and learned these moral truths? Highly unlikely. Given the diversity of time and place, given the fact that some of these cultures existed before the commandments were even written or had no contact with the outside world, the fact
Oh, I'm glad he pointed that out. So God decided to give us a commandment after humanity was already flourishing in their own fucking laws. And he thought it was quite important to put in something like thou shalt not kill when we are already not killing each other, at least within our own community, and that's a law. Instead of saying thou shalt not have slaves, which is a common practice. What a loving moral God.
that these truths are held universally shows that they were not taught, but rather exist innately in human nature. There is something within us that just knows these things are wrong. No one
Yeah, we're social animals and we understand because of our level of intellect that killing each other does not benefit us. Obviously, we have some outliers, right? Because some people are psychopaths, sociopaths. But for the main part, we can all agree that killing each other wouldn't really benefit society. It will go against our social nature.
had to tell us. And if that's the case, if there are moral truths that exist in nature universally, meaning that they were not written or prescribed by humans, then there must be an intelligent, moral being that fashioned the way the world is. There
Oh, yeah, us. We're the intelligent, moral beings to fashion our own morality. And also, if God is so moral and He put innately in us how to be moral, why didn't He also give it to, I don't know, tigers, lions that will kill the cubs? So why not? Give it to every animal. Uh, Are we special in some way? Are we not also animals? Like, it's such a stupid, flawed argument. Why would God let the animal kingdom be so fucking crazy and then give us intelligence and make it look like, okay, it's literally naturally designed because we're social animals to have this moral, I guess, to have morality and understand that some things are not fair. use our brains, are intelligent, which we can explain a bit by natural means, like I'm doing right now. God would design it to be like that, to make it look like it's literally natural. And then on the flip side, we have literally other animals killing each other for food. Loving God.
There must be a God who writes these truths on our hearts. Now, some will undoubtedly point out that there are some individuals in our world that disagree with these precepts, and even more that blatantly ignore them. This does not disprove the existence of natural law, but merely points to the disobedience and ignorance of some in humanity.
That doesn't make any sense. What if they are actually a psychopath and they don't actually feel empathy? What if they're a sociopath and by no fault of their own, they would just do things that is against society? That's by their design of nature. That's by their design. They're not the one choosing it. It's just them. They're psychopaths because they can't feel empathy. They're outliers in the norm of humanity, but like they still exist. So you're saying God designed those? Why? Just for fun?
Individuals will fall short of any moral code. That doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. When we see a near universal acceptance of certain truths across language and culture, there can only be one answer. God made it that way. And for what purpose? Why do we exist? To answer that question, we must conclude with our fourth and final proof, teleological arguments. When you think about the complexity of our world, the nature of subatomic particles, the depth of the human brain, how delicate life is in this universe and yet it thrives, and then consider the astronomical number of factors that had to be in place for each to develop over a course of 14 billion years, it seems improbable, to say the least, that they happened by
I mean, thanks for at least admitting to the fact that the universe is about 14. Actually, I think it's just 13. Anyways, being billion years old, not just 6,000, or everything created in 6 days.
accident. You're telling me that we exist simply by chance? Those are some long odds. The universe is more than a random collection of atoms. It has order, intelligibility, beauty, and even purpose. There is no way that all of this is the result of mere randomness. Christians conclude that there must be a source of the intelligence, a being that is all knowing and all powerful. God. The most famous of these arguments is the watchmaker. When you look to the many gears and components that make up a watch,
Like I have said, the animal kingdom is a cruel place. Why would God design it to be like that? That doesn't seem to make any sense. That's the best thing I could throw out there. It's such a stupid argument and it's flawed in so many ways. It doesn't even deserve anybody's time. And the watchmaker argument is so stupid. Yeah, because I know how watches are made. At least I have some idea. I know it's made by humans. But I don't know how the fucking planet is made. Actually, technically I could find that out. But it's not like I see humans making planets. You understand what I mean? I know how laptops can be made and that they're made by humans, but I don't see any human making the sun. So how can you just say, "Oh, this is must be intelligently designed because this is designed. A cup is designed by humans, an intelligent being. So an intelligent being must have designed everything else." Jeez.
there is no way that the universe could have randomly produced it. It requires that there be an intelligent creator. But there are more sophisticated versions of this argument as well. When we look to the natural world and see even inanimate, unintelligent things acting with some intelligible pattern or towards a particular end, it follows that there must be an intelligent end by which everything was created and toward which everything is oriented. Beyond just an argument of design, like the watchmaker, this sort of argument implies more than just intelligibility, but purpose. The things we see do not simply reveal some order in the universe.
What about little bacteria that harm us? What about viruses? What about those are living things? What are their purposes? To fucking kill us? What is malaria purpose? What are the purpose? Like, it's such a stupid thing to say. What are the purposes of diseases? To fucking control the population and kill us all? Like, it's so dumb. Intelligent design, my ass. Why would it take God 14 billion years? All knowing, all powerful God. And he can add all love in there because the process was definitely not loving. 14 billion years to get to humanity, the people he's trying to have a relationship with, just for us to legitimately be built to go against them, to be built to not even to be like to be built with sin, to be built in a sinful manner. Like, what is the point? It waited 14 billion years just to find out that humans will end up not fucking loving him and betraying him. It's so dumb. This is just a stupid argument.
They bear witness to why they exist in the first place. In this way, the entire universe can be explained by a single, intelligent, purposeful being that calls all things into existence and draws all things to himself. That can only be God. At least, that's what Christians say. You might not be convinced, which is why, ultimately, in discussions like this, it's important to make two things abundantly clear. The world is filled with evidence for the existence of God, and our minds are capable of logically understanding it, and even the most rational of arguments will not convert some people who have not received the gift of faith. While it is true that the First Vatican Council taught that God can be known with
And I'm not sure how these people argue for free will, but if and they're saying this God is good, and it's simply simple to me because I've never, as a Christian, come about to understanding this or hear this argument. I think I would have stopped being a Christian at one point if I hear any atheist point this out. So I can never understand Christians that are on YouTube, on the internet, interacting with atheists, hearing arguments, and still stay in their fucking ignorant way. If we don't have free will, if God chooses the person that are born with the gift of faith, then how the fuck can you blame me for not believing? If all I need is the gift of faith, which I am not the one in control of, you cannot blame anybody for not believing in God. How can you go out and be like trying to put your moral values or foolishness on everybody else when you also understand that you are saved by grace and the person that determines that is God? How ought anybody to be blamed for their sinful ways when they don't decide whether they are convinced by this dumb fuck argument?
certainty by the natural light of human reason, the Church has never posited that reason alone is enough to know God. Thus, there will be many who will look to these arguments without the light of faith and be unconvinced. Instead, what they offer us as Christians is not a weapon to use against our enemies, but immensely helpful tools to give reason and logic to what we already know and see in the world. They show to us and the world.
Then how do you know this? You present four arguments. None of them, by your own admission, would convince some people. In my opinion, people with brain. But none of these arguments will convince people. So how do you know? How do you know God exists? You just know? Like, if the arguments that you're making by your own admission won't convince anybody, how do you know that God exists? If your arguments are literally not backed with any evidence, they're speculation from apologetics, from philosophers, Christian philosophers. How do you know what you believe is actually true? Can you pray for God to heal someone and God heals that person immediately? What can you show to know that God actually exists? Does God show up in your life? Okay, in what way? How can we test this? I can't believe someone made this video and posted out and be like, ooh, is there proof for God existing? Is there proof for God exist? Like, ooh, and then answer the question with yes, and then end the video with, well, this might not convince some people, but we know that God exists, so this would ground of faith. Nobody cares. You can't make a video and legitimately be lying on your legitimately lying on the topic of the video.
World. That what we believe is not the result of wishful thinking or the
It
whims of
is though. It is. Because there's no evidence for it. Your arguments are flawed in every single fucking fabricated way. You actually have to come to a conclusion that God exists from pure faith. And then go back and then make arguments saying God exists, and I guess even this cops prove it. Like, you have to start from the end and then make an argument to support what you already believe through faith. You believe this based on wishful thinking.
a cult leader, but are grounded
And
in
yeah,
logical
Christianity is a cult. And funny enough, it not the entire billions of people, 2 billion people, are in one cult, which is quite funny. Because there's so many denominations, there's so many different Christian cults. You actually have to go into each. Like, have this guy explain what he sees from this four arguments to actually be able to have a conversation with his type of Christianity, his type of cult. It's insane. And yeah, it's a cult.
reasonable, and nearly irrefutable view of the world.
Yeah, that was pathetic. This might as well be the worst video of his that I've seen. Ooh, let's give you proofs of God and our God. We know God exists, and then at the end going, yeah, but like some people won't believe this unless they have the gift of faith, which they don't choose or know or decide whether they're going to. Oh, that's all I have for you today. I genuinely am coming down with an headache from a long 8 minutes compacted BS video by breaking in the habit. That's all I have for you today. If you like the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Have a lovely one, people.